Hey there guys, it's Joshua Sohn, and today I want to go over the last part of our mini-series of MIDI sweetening. In this video we're going to cover how to get the best out of your recording through the mixing process. So stay tuned and be sure to like this video if you found this video to be helpful. So let's go ahead and continue where we left off from last video. We talked about hiring the musician. We also talked about the agreement or the contract. After you set the contract, you send them the materials and then they record it, send it back to you. So this is where we are now. You have your recording at this point. Now keep in mind, the recording that you received might not be 100% perfect. I say that because there are just certain notes that don't line up, that won't always be 100% aligned with the rest of the group, and that's fine. That gives the recording character. However, those are things that you have to decide whether you should let go and pass through when you pay the musician. And then that threshold of how much you let through is really up to you, is set by you. So if you're more comfortable with the audio editing and you've done a lot of that, you know how to do nudging and you know how to crossfade, things like that, then that shouldn't be a problem. Those minor things can be correctable mostly. However, things that you don't want to deal with, or let's say you're not very comfortable with editing, then you'll probably want to ask them to re-record it until it's to your liking or to your standards. With that being said, a good rule of thumb is the better the take that they do, the less work that you'll have to do on the back end. So I'm going to go over those little things that you can correct along the way through a demonstration in my session here. So let's go ahead and look that over together. All right, this is a session that I've wrote a long time ago. It was all with samples, but what I ended up doing was I wanted to replace the violin, the solo violin part here, with a live player. In context, let me just play you the recording here. It's a very slow adagio moving piece, very emotional. I'm gonna go ahead and move to the part where the solo violin starts. Okay. And during that time, it was actually using Joshua Bell's Embertone's Joshua Bell solo violin. It sounded pretty good. I mean, it's actually printed up here, so you can hear that. Okay. I just never was 100% happy with how the sample sounded. That's why I went about this whole process to begin with. And but I also realized the range of that instrument was better suited for a viola. So I ended up having this recorded through a viola, and I also asked her if she wanted to try out the violin also, and I would just pay for both takes. So I have two takes, one with viola, one with the violin, and together I mixed in both of those into the session to make it blend in, and just having that extra track was actually nice. By the way, the player is Sarah Insalaco Olsen, or Sarah Insalaco. She has her own channel on YouTube where she plays violin and other string instruments like the cello. Check her out if you haven't already. She's a phenomenal musician. I've worked with her many times in the past. First time doing a recording for my personal stuff, but nonetheless it was really fun to work with her. So check her out. I'll actually add a little link in the description below for her. With that being said, this is her playing on the viola, and I have two tracks of viola. So I should just explain. The one up top is the same as the one on the bottom, except this is the non-edited version. It's just a full take that she sent me. and the one I approved. And then I went through this, and as you can see, I made some edits as through mostly looks like the clip gain, and then some of this that's colored over here, that's time stretched. So in combination, I pulled some of the notes back, so I nudged them back, and then I time stretched them as well. So I'll be talking about all these techniques and tools, but let me just go ahead and start from scratch on this one. So on the original. First thing that we would do, let me go ahead and mute these, is they would be super dry, right? And also this wouldn't be here. It would just be a, let's see, yeah, let's just turn that off for now. It's the EQ, everything is flat, and this is what it would sound like. Okay, so I listened to the whole thing. It sounded great, very lovely playing, great phrasing, great vibrato, all of that stuff. So what I would just do as a pre-measure for any recording or instrument that I take, even samples, is I actually turn on the high pass filter here. So let's play again. And as you can see, there's a lot of information in that lower end, 20 to 100 hertz. So I would turn that on and just filter it out. I have it at a sharp slope here at 24 decibels. That's great. Let's just keep going until it goes away, but it doesn't affect the intonation or tone of the sound. If I go too far, you'll see that affects the tone. So you want to dial it back until it's transparently filtering out the low end. And a good way to judge this is to find the lowest note in all of this. I would say probably towards the end. Actually, no, it would probably be in the beginning. That's probably the lowest note in this piece. One of those notes right there. So I would make sure that I'm not infringing on that, and find a low note in your piece and just filter out as much as you can. That's probably where I had it last, or similar to that. Next thing is I like to add any type of tonal frequency corrections. Generally, this is something you don't always have to do, but generally it's good to put a little bit of a cut between the 2 to 3K, and what that does is it just helps reduce any room or build up in that frequency, because there's just a lot of other strings doing the same thing. So that helps it be less bright and a little more warm sounding as well. Okay, so then now that I have all of that filtered out, the next step is to listen to it in context with everything else, and make sure they blend well together. Let me mute this. Okay, so if you compare what I did here to there, I decided to have this blend in more rather than sticking out. So that's why I actually did I splitted the audio right here to about here, and I actually brought this down. So if I were to do that and play you back, let's hear the difference. So it's still there, but it's more in the background. And the reason why I did that is so that the piano can really come through more. And so so it's interplay here between piano, and then you have your viola. There's even a horn part later down in this piece. But anyways, I'm gonna keep going and press play around here. Actually, let me go back more so you can hear more of that phrasing. Okay, yeah, so everything up to there pretty good. I should also mention I probably have some automation going on here that it wasn't there originally. Yeah, so the only other thing that I did is I used some automation. So this is another technique here, is using automation to pull up some things and pull down some things in real time. If you don't know how to automate, I'll show you that how to do that right now. So you can turn this W and it turns red, and this is universally done on any DAW. So the next step here is to press play. You don't actually even have to press record, you just press play. And I'm going to use this fader down here on the inspector window. I'm going to hold down shift so that you can go smaller steps up and down. If you don't do shift, you can still make automation, but it's much more exaggerated and a bigger move. So let me try that again and press play one time without automation and then one time with automation so you can hear the difference. So in one aspect, I could have, in hindsight, asked her to play this quieter and level it off and more on a decrescendo, but and that's okay. I just opted to correct that on my end through automation. So that's the main goal here, is we're gonna try to tail this down and tame down the intensity so that it matches with the rest of the ensemble. So let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, even that is better than before. I was holding down shift, and honestly, that wasn't enough of a volume change for my ears. So I'm gonna do it one more time. I'll start here, and I'm not gonna hold down shift this time, so that it's more of a drastic move. Here we go. Good. Better. And I still hear a sound poking through towards the end, so let me try it one more time. Oh, okay. Oh, it's this it's the violin solo. I had that not muted this whole time. That's my bad. That's better. Okay. So that was that was a human flaw on my end, human error. So we fixed the problem here in the automation. And that's point number 2 is you may have to use automation as a tool to fix certain parts of your take. And the third thing would be the nudging and fixing start times, even cutoffs through that, and also in conjunction with Timestretch. So here's what I mean by that. If you look in zoom mode here, you'll see how I nudged this little section. It looks like 2 notes here, and I pushed it back or pulled it back to about here on this end, whereas the start note in the original was a little bit later, so it was behind the beat essentially. So what I did was I cut where that start note was, and I'm just using approximations. You could also do this inside of here if you want, when you double click on the audio inside Cubase, but this I generally work through here. That might be a little unorthodox, but it works for me. And then what you'll do is you'll do that with a crossfade, and just make sure that this transition between this event here and this event blend together. So I'm going to solo that. Okay, now that it starts right on that beat here in the grid, I'm happy with that, but you'll see there's a gap here, and this is where Timestretch comes in. So in order to activate Timestretch, you can click on the time or sizing applies Timestretch, and there's a little clock that comes up in Cubase. There's similar functions in other DAWs, of course, and I'm just going to drag that out till they're a little bit overlapping on that next part, and then also crossfade. And let's go and hear the crossfade. And then what you're listening for is any, well, you want to make sure it's smooth, but if there's any clicks and pops, you'll have to adjust the crossfade accordingly. I got it on the first try, it looks like. So then if we were to just play the whole thing together, let's do that in context. Great. Okay, so those are certain things that I would do. You know, when you find a lot of mistakes, it's better just to turn back and ask your musician to re-record it. But again, if it's just a small moment like this here, then 1 or 2 of these are fine. Then with that being said, you have that section corrected with Timestretch. What I like to do is I like to keep my color coding for any audio takes different from my other takes here. When it's gray, I know that it's a live performance one, and so that way if I do any edits, I can color code that with different messages. So yellow for me is Timestretch. If there's a tuning issue, I'll do that with green, and so on. So those are little things that I do. Other color coding ideas are, let's say you're scanning through the whole track and you don't like something, you might just put that in red for now, and then you can deal with it later. And then once you fix it, you can turn that green or something. But yeah, that's just a suggestion. You don't have to do that. With other things like tuning, let's just touch on that. So there might be notes that are not tuned to the right note. It could be a completely wrong note, like maybe it's a semitone off, or it's on the right note but it's just flat. So let's go over that real quick. And in Cubase, there's an easy way to do it. If you double click in the audio file, you can actually go in and actually, before I do that, let me bounce this little section. You can go in here and do Vary Audio, and it'll actually tell you all the notes that are in the take according to a piano grid. So this is equal temperament tuning, if you're familiar with that. And so this is just kind of basing everything off of equal temperament. According to what I see, everything is perfectly on pitch. But let's say this note was wrong and I needed it to be on a G. I can change that on the fly just by clicking on that very audio. Let me press solo. Okay, as opposed to, that's the right note, but if I thought that was the wrong note and I changed it, you could probably go maybe up to one or two at most before it starts to sound weird. So for instance, if I go with this high, it might sound weird. Well, it works. Sometimes if it's with vocals or other instruments, it might not work. So it's best to only stay within a certain amount of movement or intervals wise. But that's one tip. The other thing is there's a way to straighten vibrato. If it's too much vibrato, you can actually straighten that a bit. You can also use this on a global scale. So let's say these notes were just slightly not on pitch. You can highlight all of them and then you can just go here and quantize the pitch, and that'll bring them up to a certain grid. So that is the editing of the tuning in a nutshell. The last thing would be fading out, crossfades, things like that. So a good example would be on a tail at the end. So let's say the violin was starting, or I should say ending too late. Then what I would do is I would just use a crossfade to match the rest of the ensemble and fade that out accordingly. So, and again, you can do this in automation as well, but sometimes you can better control that using the fade in and out of the audio clip itself. So that's the editing tools in a nutshell. We have the high pass filtering, or sometimes low pass filtering, depending. There's also the automation. So when you're going through your piece and you want to automate certain lines to go higher or lower, you can do that in real time. And then there's clip gain as well. This is a global thing where you can go ahead and split certain sections and make them stand out more or less. And that's crossfaded generally as well. So you do that and you crossfade. I already pressed it, so it's already crossfaded, and that's why this showed up. But that's the clip gain adjustment. There's also nudging, and that's to pull back or push forward certain start times of your notes here. And then that in conjunction, probably you'll have to time stretch as well. And so you time stretch that to have that seamlessly transition to the next part. Fades are also very important. You'll use fade ins, fade outs, crossfading anytime that you need to do that as well. So those are the tools and tricks that you guys can use while you are editing your audio take. But now let's talk about what I would do for have this blend into the rest of your ensemble. We've already gotten probably I would say 80% of the way there. So meaning as long as your volume and balance is good, you're pretty much there. We're gonna add a couple more things to make it just that much better. First and foremost, the thing that is going to make this blend in more is to make it match with the room. So let me go ahead and play this without the takes. Okay, so notice how everything is pretty wet, and the reverbs are very generously applied here. So everything is ambient and has a big tail. So what I need to do here is to add more reverb. first thing I would do is to add a convolution reverb. So I'm going to show you my favorite plugin for that. It's the Valhalla Room. And this convolution reverb has so many presets. You can do different chambers, rooms, you can do halls. I have it set to one called String Hall. I think it's under this one here. And I just did Strings Hall. And then notice in the mix, it's not 100%, it's about 15%. And let's listen to how that sounds together. I'll solo it. I'm going to bypass it. I'll bypass it again. So you can hear the difference on that. So automatically now it starts to match the same ambience of the other instruments here. So let's listen to that with the piano. Great. Okay, so we have that. Now the next part would be also in conjunction with the convolution reverb that's in the insert. I also like to add one in the sends, and that just kind of gives it more of a wash. It's not too much. I have negative 28 decibels applied to it. I'll go ahead and bypass these so you can hear a difference. Okay, and as you do this also with the rest of the ensemble. So let's go back here. I'm going to press play, and now I'll bypass it here as well. It's subtle, but I think it's good to do this. You can also dial it in and just use your ears. I mean, it might be even better at that spot, even though I set it originally at negative 28 in the original mixing session I did. But yeah, so I think even around negative 20 would be good. Okay, so now that everything is edited and mixed, I would just do a final pass listening to it. Maybe take a break after, come back to it the next day, listen, render it down. Once it's mastered and all that, of course, but render it down and you should be ready to go. I'm just going to play a little bit of this for you again so that we can hear this in context with the extra plugins that we've added. Yeah, so in hindsight, I probably would want to raise this up just a bit like that. And do your tweaks and whatnot. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We've reached the end of the mini series now, and it covers just about everything we need to get you going from the very start to the end line here. So I made this video to walk you through so that you feel more empowered by making great music, and this is something I'm really passionate about. I think it's really important to hire musicians in conjunction with your sample libraries, and if possible, hire the entire orchestra or entire band instead of your samples, as that makes a huge difference in the quality of the music that you make. Also, subscribe if you haven't already so that you can see more videos like this. Until next time, my name is Joshua Sohn. It was a pleasure to be here with you on this. I will see you next time.